I love cheesy poos, you love cheesy poos. If we didn't cheesy poos, we'd be lame. I'm talking Night Court in its 5th season, lame.
Greetings and good evening once again, fellow YouTubers. This is Hell's Unicorn once again, providing you with a blog giving you information on the latest concerning presidential candidate Ron Paul. All of my fellow Paul supporters out there were no doubt a bit revolted at his treatment on the Morning Joe television program this morning. So for those of you who are not regularly reading the Lou Rockwell site, I'm going to read some of what's up here regarding the recent turn of events. This is titled The Ignorant David Schuster on the Morning Joe, and I provided a link to this article. Joe Scarborough's stand-in on the Morning Joe television program, David Schuster, once again has tried to smear Ron Paul and once again reveals his ignorance in doing so. This morning, Ron called in to correct the lies that various neocons like Schuster have been spreading about what he said to Tim Russert about Lincoln and his war. Schuster adamantly claimed that Ron Paul had embarrassed himself by claiming that Lincoln did not invade his own country to free the slaves. But it is Schuster who is embarrassingly ignorant of his own history. In fact, it would be hard to find a single American historian with any credibility who would argue that in 1861 an invasion of the southern states was launched to free the slaves. Schuster is not only unaware of what is written in my book, The Real Lincoln, but also of what is in almost all other books on the war. Slave owners in the border states occupied by the U.S. Army were allowed to keep their slaves. Whenever any of Lincoln's generals, such as General Fremont, took it upon themselves to emancipate some slaves early in the war, he rebuffed them, reversed their decisions, and demoted them. The Emancipation Proclamation itself very specifically exempted all areas of the country that were controlled by the U.S. Army, guaranteeing that no slaves would be emancipated by the proclamation. In his first inaugural address, Lincoln referred to the proposed Corwin Amendment to the Constitution that would have prohibited the federal government from ever interfering with slavery. He said that he already held the legality of slavery to be implied constitutional law, and I quote, "I have no objection to its being made express and irreversible by enshrining slavery specifically in the Constitution." Not only that, but it was Lincoln, working with William Seward, who orchestrated the passing of that amendment through the U.S. Senate. Even Lincoln worshipper Doris Kearns Goodwin documents all of this in her book, Team of Rivals, on page 296. Schuster, of course, knows nothing at all about this, nor does anyone else in the media, apparently. In an August 22, 1862 letter to newspaper editor Horace Greeley, Lincoln explained the purpose of the war in his own words. "My paramount objective in this struggle is to save the Union, and is not either to save or destroy slavery. If I could save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing some and leaving others alone, I would also do that. What I do about slavery and the colored race, I do because I believe it helps to save the Union." Of course, in reality, he destroyed the voluntary union of the states that was established by the founders. The U.S. Congress concurred with Lincoln's statement. On July 22, 1861, it issued a proclamation saying that the purpose of the war was not interfering with the rights or established institutions of those states that had seceded, but to preserve the Union with the rights of the several states, including slavery, unimpaired. This is an ugly truth, but it is the truth. It is also something that David Schuster is totally unaware of. And the reason why he's unaware of it is because, like most people, he is beholden to our public miseducation system, which conveniently leaves all this stuff out and basically presents Lincoln as some sort of hero figure. Nothing could be further from the truth in my own personal opinion. I think that Abraham Lincoln was a warmongering idiot and basically killed an entire generation of Americans just to further his own historical legacy. I think the man's reprehensible. I think that he is actually worse than Alexander Hamilton, and that is a big accomplishment, believe you me. So to those of you out there who consider yourself Ron Paul supporters who are embarrassed about this, I recommend a very heavy dose of research into the true events of those times. And a good place to start would be The Real Lincoln by Thomas DiLorenzo, who also wrote this article. And there are naturally other ones. You can look up pro and anti-Lincoln historical documents, and you'll find in unison that they all state the same thing. The initial purpose of the Civil War was to preserve the union of all the states and to oppose secession, not to free the slaves. That was a political ploy that was put in later in the 1864 election in order to save Lincoln's presidency. And to those of you out there who are African American, who are still under the belief that Lincoln was a friend of yours, you need to read some of the literature put out by your own leaders, because even the most prominent of black leaders are extremely skeptical of Abraham Lincoln, and they should be, because I think he is the most directly responsible for more than 100 years of persecution, murder, and rape, by inciting the hatred that continues in some places to this day between poor white Southerners and black Southerners. It's basically my viewpoint that the slaves in the South were a disposable tool of Lincoln and his radical Republican Party. And that the unfortunate truth is that the South was the victim of a hostile takeover and nobody really won. And in the North it was the same story. Thousands upon thousands of people were used as cannon fodder, including several of my own ancestors who fled persecution in Ireland only to find it again in New York City. With prudence to myself and benevolence to all of you, good evening.